My story begins not with a bang, but with the quiet, steady rhythm of a life I had built from the ashes of a broken family. To understand what happened on that chaotic morning, you need a little bit of backstory. I'm 20 years old now, but the defining moment of my childhood happened a decade ago, when I was 10. That was the year my parents' marriage completely imploded. My dad is a farmer, a good and honest man whose hands are calloused from working the land his father worked before him. We live a simple life, rooted in the earth of Oak Valley, a place where your word is your bond and your sweat earns your keep. My mother, on the other hand, always dreamed of a life she saw in glossy magazines. A life of luxury, glamour, and status. She saw my dad's hard work not as noble, but as a barrier to the high life she felt she was owed. The breaking point came when she finally found a man who could give her that life. She sat my father down one evening and confessed she had been cheating. But the confession came with a devastating twist. She told him that my younger siblings, Chloe and Marcus, who were 7 and 8 at the time, weren't his biological children. She had shattered our family with a single sentence. Her reason? The other man was wealthy, powerful, and could give her everything a farmer's salary couldn't. When they went to court to finalize the divorce, the judge asked about custody for me. My mother, without a flicker of emotion, said she wanted nothing to do with me. I was a reminder of the life she was so desperate to leave behind. She left my dad with full custody of me, took Chloe and Marcus, and married her wealthy affair partner less than a month after the ink on the divorce papers was dry. In the years that followed, my only contact with her was for appearances. With the rise of social media, she needed to maintain the illusion of a perfect, blended family. So, once or twice a year, she'd summon me for a family photo. I would stand there, smiling awkwardly next to her new husband and my siblings, and the moment the camera clicked off, I would become invisible again. She'd toss me aside, her duty done. Because of her influence, my own brother and sister grew to look down on me. To them, I was the son of a simple farmer, a relic from a past they were taught to be ashamed of. We were strangers who shared a little bit of DNA, and nothing more. So, that's the stage. Now, let's get to the main event. It was a crisp Tuesday morning, around 7:30 a.m. The sun was just starting to burn off the morning mist that clung to the fields. I was out in the feedlot on my tractor, the deep rumble of the engine a familiar comfort. I had my headphones in, having a bit of a jam session while I worked. Life was good. It was peaceful. Suddenly, I saw my dad walking towards me, his face set like stone. He had a cigarette hanging from his lips, but it was unlit. He had a habit of doing that when he was seriously agitated. He'd try to light it, fail, and just let it hang there. It was his version of a storm warning. He waved me down, and I killed the engine, the sudden silence of the farmyard rushing in. "Someone's here to see you, Leo," he said, his voice low and tight. "Who is it?" I asked, though I didn't really need an answer. The thundercloud on his face told me everything. He just grunted and threw the unlit cigarette to the ground, crushing it under his boot. I knew then and there it could only be one person. I hopped off the tractor, my work boots crunching on the gravel. I walked around the big barn, and my eyes landed on a sight so out of place it was almost comical. Parked right there, next to my dad's dusty Ford pickup, was a brand new, gleaming black Porsche. And sitting in the driver's seat, staring at her reflection in the visor mirror, was my mother. To properly describe her appearance is a challenge. Imagine someone tried to follow a makeup tutorial from one of those ultra-glam influencers but used 10 times the recommended amount of product. Her face was a mask of foundation, her eyebrows were drawn on with architectural precision, and she had a spray tan so aggressive it would make a tangerine look pale. Topping it all off was a razor-sharp blonde bob, the kind of haircut that seems to demand to speak to a manager. I've always wondered if she'd ever do a face reveal and show the world what was actually underneath all that spackle and paint. I took a deep breath, mentally preparing myself for battle, and walked up to her window. I kept my voice even and polite. "Hello," I said simply. She lowered her window, and a wave of expensive, overpowering perfume washed over me. Her perfectly sculpted nose wrinkled as if she'd just smelled manure for the first time in her life. She looked me up and down, her gaze lingering on my dusty jeans and work-stained shirt. Honestly, Leo, she began, her voice dripping with disgust. Don't you own anything better to wear besides those filthy rags? And for heaven's sake, take that wad of chewing tobacco out of your mouth. I'm embarrassed that you're my son looking like that. I shifted my weight, feeling the familiar mix of anger and resignation that always came with her presence. These are my work clothes, because I was working, I replied calmly. And I just put this chew in. It hasn't even kicked in yet. What do you want? She sighed dramatically, as if my very existence was a huge inconvenience. I need to ask you a favor. In fact, it's rather important. The first thought that popped into my head was a sarcastic one. She's joined a cult and needs a blood sacrifice for tonight's meeting. I kept that to myself. What is it? I asked, my tone flat. You see, she said, leaning forward conspiratorially, your sister Chloe is graduating this year. She's going to college. And I think it would only be fair that you gave her the money your grandfather left for you. I mean, you obviously don't need it. And there it was. I knew exactly what she was after. My grandfather, my dad's dad, was a wise and stubborn man. Years ago, he had set aside a fund for each of his grandchildren. A tidy sum of $25,000. The rule was simple. Once you turned 18 and had either graduated high school or earned a GED, the money was yours to use for college, a car, a down payment on a house, whatever you wanted. After the divorce, my mother had the audacity to approach my grandpa. She argued that not only should her kids, Chloe and Marcus, still get their share, but that he should beef it up a few grand to account for inflation and their new, more expensive lifestyle. My grandpa, a man who valued loyalty above all else, was furious. In a move of pure, unadulterated spite, he went to his lawyer and changed his will. He took the money originally meant for Chloe and Marcus and put it all into my fund. He told my mother to her face, only my actual grandkids get my money. A few years later, my grandpa passed away. My dad, in his quiet way of showing love and support, added a significant portion of his own inheritance into my fund. So when I graduated high school and finally gained access to it, the total wasn't $25,000. It was $93,000. I had since used about $27,000 of it to buy a new tractor for the farm, an investment in my future, and put the rest into a high-yield savings account, where I add to it with every paycheck. I stared at her, the hum of the farm a distant backdrop to the roaring in my ears. Why on earth would I give Chloe any of my money? I asked, my voice dangerously low. She doesn't even speak to me. Because it would only be fair, she insisted, her voice rising. Your grandfather unfairly denied her that money she deserves, and she's actually going to be attending a proper university, unlike you. Plus, as her big brother, you need to be responsible for her. The nerve of this woman was staggering. That money was left to me, for me to use as I wish, I shot back. Besides, if she wants to ask me for money, she can grow up and ask me herself instead of sending you to do her dirty work. She doesn't need to ask you. In fact, I shouldn't have to be asking you, she snapped. But since your grandfather was such a stubborn old jerk and you weren't caring enough to just offer it to her before, well, here I am. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Aren't you and your new husband paying for her college? Why would I need to give her anything? She launched into a convoluted explanation about how they were covering tuition and housing, but Chloe would need spending money. She declared that her daughter shouldn't have to work a low-level job just to have money for fun and socializing. So, why don't you just give her spending money? I asked, genuinely confused by her logic. Because college is expensive, she whined, as if she was struggling to make ends meet instead of driving a six-figure car. We're already spending so much. Can't you just do this for her? No, I said, the word tasting sweet. I won't. And since when has anything been too expensive for you? Just make your candy work a little harder. Like you always did when you wanted something big and flashy. Her face went from pleading to furious in a split second. How dare you speak to me like that? I am your mother. You should be grateful I even gave birth to you, she shrieked. Then, her tone shifted again, becoming wheedling. Even just a little bit will help, Leo. A few thousand. When she said, just a little bit will help, a fantastic, deliciously petty idea bloomed in my mind. A wide, genuine smile spread across my face for the first time. I changed my posture, letting my shoulders slump in mock defeat. You know what? You're right, I said, my voice full of false apology. I'm sorry. I should give her something. You're absolutely right. Her face lit up with triumph. She thought she had one. I'm just going to run back to my truck and grab my checkbook, I told her. I'll be right back. I turned and walked away before she could say another word. I didn't go to my work truck, though. I went to my personal pickup, the old one I'd had since high school. I opened the door and leaned in, but I wasn't looking for a checkbook. I was digging through the center console, through the cup holder sticky with spilled soda, and into the little coin tray. I gathered up every single penny I could find. Every little bit helps, right? After I had a decent handful, probably about 20 cents worth, I walked back over to the Porsche. My mother was beaming, her victory seemingly assured. Hold out your hand, I said with a cheerful smile. Confused but expectant, she held out her perfectly manicured hand. I opened my own hand and dropped the collection of grimy pennies into her palm. They made a pathetic little clinking sound. She stared down at the coins, her smile faltering. What is this? She asked, her voice trembling. You said a little bit could help a lot, didn't you? I responded, my smile not wavering. So I thought you could have just that. A little bit. The understanding dawned on her face, and it was quickly replaced by a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. This isn't what I meant, she screamed, her voice cracking. A few thousand is what I had in mind. She threw the pennies back at me with such force that a few of them actually stung my cheek. Then, she started to completely lose it. She laid on the horn of the Porsche, the high-pitched, expensive sound blaring across the quiet farmyard. She was screaming at the top of her lungs, a torrent of demands and insults. She called me every name under the sun, her carefully applied makeup starting to look cracked under the strain of her fury. It was like watching a wild animal in a cage. Honestly, I was just thinking, where's a tranquilizer dart when you need one? I just stood there, watching this meltdown with a strange sense of detachment. She was demanding money, calling me selfish, ungrateful, a disappointment. Then, just as she was taking a breath to start a new round of screaming, another sound cut through the air. It was my dad's voice, yelling from somewhere over by the barn. Hey! Shut up and get off my property, he bellowed. The sound of his voice shocked her into silence. In that quiet moment, I looked her straight in the eye. You know, I said conversationally, you never did say thank you. That was it. That was the final straw. She swore at me, a string of curses that would make a sailor blush. You will give your sister what she deserves, she hissed. I gave her one last, final smile. When you do that face reveal, I'll happily do it. She cursed at me one more time, scrambled back into her car like a creature fleeing the light, and slammed the door. She revved the engine, sending a cloud of gravel and dust into the air as she sped down our long driveway, leaving a trail of chaos in her wake. And then, there was silence. The peaceful quiet of the farm returned, broken only by the distant lowing of a cow. My dad walked over, his face still grim but with a hint of a proud smile in his eyes. He clapped me on the shoulder. Well, he said, that was her biannual visit. Glad it's over. I nodded, kicking at the gravel where the Porsche had been. Me too, Dad. Me too. Looking back, what did she really think was going to happen? Did she honestly believe that after 10 years of neglect, I would just hand over the money my grandfather had specifically protected for me? She abandoned me, yet she felt entitled to the fruits of my family's love and hard work. The money wasn't just money. It was a symbol of my grandfather's faith in me and my dad's love. It was the foundation of the life I was building here, on the land they both loved. My mother and her world of luxury Porsches and fake tans had no place here, and she certainly had no claim on my future. Video returns to the host. Host, wow. Just, wow. Leo's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes, the most toxic people in our lives are the ones who share our blood. He stood up for himself, for his father, and for the memory of his grandfather. Now we have to ask you, what would you have done in their place? And who do you think was wrong here, him or her? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you've ever had to start over after a major life change like a divorce, we'd love for you to share your wisdom. If you've ever had to start over, share one piece of advice for others. Your experience could be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Thank you for joining us on Talesflix. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another one. We'll see you next time.